The Arctic report begins, as you might expect, with a cold region. The Polar Sea, notable for hosting the adorable Pokhara, also features a fearsome variety of monsters. A combination of Mesoportian Brachydios, the Ice Emperor Toa, and the violent Gyaurugu means that any new arrivals have to be tough as nails to survive in this environment. So it's no surprise really that we see a multitude of Zenith monsters thrive here, the first of our report being the violent Saw Wyvern, Zenith Anorupatisu. Anoru is yet another Frontier original that got souped up with a Z relative, and contributes some pretty impressive moves to the fight, as well as an interesting mechanical change. Anoru was introduced at a time where the main series had moved on a bit, and as such more advancements were being made. Therefore, Anoru is actually a monster that takes a lot of its base behaviour and movement from the 3rd generation Diablos rig. You can see this in a few of the tail swipe animations as well as an updated Rathian backflip, not to mention it flails in the air when dunked rather than falling straight to earth like 2nd generation flying wyverns. This aforementioned backflip is another move that is loaned to the Zenith, with follow-up icicles that will inflict instant stun once they hit you, leaving you wide open for a follow-up move. This is a move that's designed to bait those of us who are familiar with Rathian's backflip and who rush into position to hit the head as early as possible. Therefore, patience must be exercised when facing this guy. There are a couple of other attacks that bear some similarity to the base version, but they're repurposed for the fighting style of this upgraded form. Whilst your standard Anorupatisu focuses on more of the ice breath and forming geysers of freezing water, the Zenith is a bit more of a traditional brawler, using its performance-enhanced horn to smash and slash you into a quick grave. Furthermore, both monsters share a unique tell and change in behaviour when they're low on health. They'll both dive into the ice and re-emerge with a shriek now covered in dragon energy. From here, any additional ice attacks will become infused with dragon element, and for the Zenith it means that you'll have to deal with the standard dragon blight if you get clocked late in the fight. Going back to this horn, however, the differences in design are fairly clear. Zenith Swordfish has a much lighter blue shell, accentuated with these white highlights that look to either be an ecological change to provide greater camouflage, or perhaps a gameplay design choice to denote the age of the monster. It's a shot in the dark for me here. You'll also note the larger tail and much bigger dorsal fin, something which isn't really surprising for a turbocharged version of a pretty powerful wyvern to begin with. You would also have to be blind to miss the Zenith body part, the horn. Whilst the original Anoru had a thin, serrated rapier of a horn, the Zenith over here decided to outfit itself with an unholy cross between a harpoon and an entire cruise missile. This massive horn is so large, and the supporting bone structure in the base of the thing covers the whole top half of Anoru's head and face. It's very clear this weaponized nose is going to be target locked right at your hunter's ribcage. Getting into that next, the fight. First thing that happens immediately upon entering the spawn area is we get ambushed. Anoru will tunnel right towards you and jump out of the ice, so you'll have to hit the ground running as soon as you're in the zone. Now once this is over and we get into the actual fight, we get to play with a new Zenith Blight, in particular Zenith Ice Blight. Whilst not as immediately threatening as fire, it's still a pretty harsh one to deal with mid-fight. When afflicted, your hunter's stamina bar begins to drain rapidly, whilst ice builds up around them. To recover, you have to go crazy on the face buttons and left stick, much like when you're stunned before your stamina drops to 0. Now if you fail at this, you end up completely frozen in place, open to the next attack that comes across you. Pretty nasty, and another blight whereby packing the right elemental resistance is recommended. Next, as mentioned before, whilst there is some tendency for the monster to use ice breath attacks and falling icicles to take you out, it's much more of a physical brawler. Zenith Anoru will slam its horn often into the ice, creating Z-level tremors and cracks in the ground that will burst with frost as a follow-up, as well as this wide-reaching spin attack that uses the massive tail to follow up. You're going to get caught by that one a lot, which is why blade or slashing weapons tend to cut the tail quite often. At the first quest level, there are 2 significant attacks to cover. Firstly is this slam attack, which will clue you into the monster's latent affinity for dragon element. Anoru will rear back slowly and slam his horn into the ground. You want to roll as soon as you see the horn descend, as the range is pretty significant, and you've got to keep your eyes on his face as it's stuck in the ground. The moment it seems to push in a little further, you want to roll again, as a massive dragon explosion erupts around him. There's little to no follow-up after this unless you can attack whilst evading, as you'll be greeted with a Zenith level roar almost immediately. So you've got to make sure you're aware of what evasive or guard point options you have on your weapon to avoid the double tap. Weapons like Hammer should probably invest in Zenith level earplugs, as they lack the extra evades to get past this quick combo. Next is the tunneling attack. Anoru jumps back in the air and then corkscrews down at you immediately to dig into the ground. All you have to do once it disappears is wait for the ice to puff beneath you 3 times. This will signify when, and more importantly in multiplayer, who will have Anoru burst from beneath and slam into the ground. You roll the first burst, and remember to roll the slam after a slight delay to ensure you aren't caught. If we move up the quest levels, we only get one new attack, this sweeping dragon beam at 400. It has a pretty unique tail and it's nice and easy to roll through. Honestly, there's not really too much to say about this aside from making sure you're aware that the hitbox extends just a little bit past the head. If we get to 600 it has, no changes. Same bastard, same moves, more damage. 800 on the other hand gets one single attack, and it's all Anoru needs. Sometimes doing more damage than the sun falling on you isn't enough, since people like myself are simply built different and will just resist it or get around it somehow. Nope, what Capcom decided would be a fantastic idea is to throw the idea of simple damage out the window and make a move that if it hits you, you just die. Straight up, one hit kill. What will happen is the nose digs in and launches a big old hunk of ice into the sky. You'll then get greeted to essentially a cutscene where Anoru will jump up and pile drive you so hard your hunter ends up buried in the dirt. There's no coming back from that, and as such, if you get hit, that's it. Armor and skills be damned. You'll begin to see this new trend of attacks coming out of Zenith Monsters that do just ignore defense or any sort of resistances. We'll cover those as I think they're rather fascinating that you're basically forced to deal with the attack via iframes or blocking and have to have this intensive knowledge of what comes next to be able to avoid taking a cart. Anyways, that's the Anoru fight and all of the changes. Personally, I love the guy, he's one of my favourite Zeniths. The fight does have its jank moments, and you've got this mile-long tail that causes issues, not to mention the insta-charges are still the soiled underwear of fight design that are present here, but overall it's a solid scrap, and scary too. It's a clear upgrade from the base species with a well-defined purpose. It's way more threatening, and with a face as ridiculous as that, how could it not be a brilliant summary of the complete decadence and extravagance that these monsters were made for? Zenith Anorupatisu. Bigger, bolder, absolutely bonkers. Thanks for checking out the first part of the Zenith Arctic report. I'm at this point in script writing where I said I'll do these in batches of 5 or 4, and I'm getting to the video editing part next, so wow, I made those intros real cinematic, that was sure a step up. This will either be ironic or true depending on if I gave up 2 seconds into editing or setting music to images. Ah well, stay tuned for the next report. Cera out.